Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me. I'm back. It's Robert Phoenix, and it is Sunday night. Thank you for your patience as we get things rolling here for another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. And I'm getting a kind of, I don't know, it's a little weird. I've got a little bit of green screen bleed through. I suppose I could always take the cap off, or I could go old school. But then I look, I don't know. I'm not gonna stress out about it too much. I'll just flip it around and we'll just phase in and out of reality here. I felt like I needed to wear the trucker cap tonight. How is everyone? We're coming off of a great, and I mean great, epic show with the one and only David Palmer, which took place on Friday night. If you haven't seen it, go over to the Leo King's YouTube channel. We're up to 18,000 views right now. And for everybody from David's World who subscribed to my channel, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's always just it's a really interesting relationship with David. I have to say, because um, you know, if you go on his page, if you go on that YouTube page for the show, you'll read almost every single comment talks about how much chemistry and synergy that David and I have when we just go live and riff it. And I would agree. And somebody said, who was it? They said that that they have seen a lot of astrologers work together and do, you know, live stuff with one another, but just not what David and I do. And I would agree with that. And the reason I would agree with that is because I'm not sure that there's another astrologer out there that has a grasp on astrology in the way that David is. And I would say David, without a doubt, is a master astrologer. I would have no problem just co-signing on that. And the thing about David, which is also great, is that his historical knowledge is really, really good. Like he knows cycles in history and time. And I do too, right? So, you know, we can really play off that stuff and we bring different things to the table a little bit. But man, when it works, it really works. So, you know, I don't know how we would do on a regular basis. I would hope that we would do fine. You know, that we could maybe roll something out maybe once a month. I think that could be really, really good. And somebody said something. I think it might have been the same comment. And I apologize. I forget who wrote it. And I know that you have. I know this person has you know, kind of followed me along and followed David along as well. And you know, not that we're out here like handing you the keys of Enoch or anything, right? I mean, that's not really happening in that way. But she said something that was along the lines of timing and now being a time, right? Now being a time where voices can be heard and people can pick up on you know, what two people are saying or what they have to share. And you know, when I read that, like, you know, that's really interesting. And I'm thinking, you know, that's true. I mean, maybe when we get together and we connect, and look, David is great on his own. I mean, he's clearly very entertaining, and he's gonna give you some really pertinent information. And I'm, you know, and when I do this, you know, I enjoy doing it, and people seem to enjoy what I do. But when we do it together like that, the power seems to be amplified. I have to say that. Like, it feels like we're combining something that has a greater force than the two of us separately. So the synergy is definitely there. And that to me is interesting. So, you know, maybe in this time where the amplification can actually work for us and other people, I think it's exciting, and I'm definitely open to it to see where, you know, we can go and do this on a semi regular basis. So again, thank you for all the kind words. And thanks again for David, or to David, for letting me be on his show. I think next time I'll have him over here, and we'll do a Sunday night over here. We got to be reciprocal with our intention and our space. Okay, let's see who we have here. Of course, there she is, the lovely and talented Dr. Joan S. Right there. Numero uno. Number one with a bullet. By the way, that's not a bad thing. Number one with a bullet. Oh, look who's here. It's the Astro Cat. Southwest Florida real estate with Lewis Walden. What is up with you? If I'm ever in Southwest Florida and I need real estate, I'm looking up Lewis Walden. Lewis Walden is my realtor in that part of Florida. So if you're there in Southwest Florida, don't hesitate. Give Lewis a call. Susie Gemini, what's going on, Susie G? MLMCI, good to see you. There's Mark S. Hi, Mark. What's going on? Garrett Brooks in the house. There's my man Ryan, introspective woodworker himself. Thomas Jordan, good evening, Mr. T, the man with the wrench. I'm going to get you. Does Ryan have a wrench? Yeah, he does. Good. W.C. Ray, next weekend, this time Sports World will be in Blue Heaven. He's who's he going to root for? Is Robbie going to root for Duke, or is he going to root for North Carolina? I bet he roots for the Tar Heels. He's a Tar Heel guy. That's my sense. Come on up here. Coming up here, tenderfoot. Let's go. Come on. Yeah, come on. Get your furry red butt up here. Come on, let's go. There he is. Jasper, the astrological cat. He's Jasper, the astrological cat. All right, who else? You like my screen background? This is why it took me so long tonight to get on the show, because I was feverishly trying to get in to try to get a graphic that I really liked. And I have to be careful when I use graphics sometimes, because one time, like, I really love this comic book artist named Jack Kirby, who did a lot of illustrations during the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. And I love his like New God series and Mr. Miracle and all that stuff, right? I just love those illustrations. And one time I used a New Gods image on a blog post that I had. And I think it was Light Ray and Orion from the New Gods. And I got an email from Jack Kirby's son, and he told me to take it down, and that his father hated astrology. I'm like, dude, you just ruined my kind of Jack Kirby moment there. Okay, so I took it down. I got to be careful. This is from an older comic book. You have to be careful with these images. But that is one hot space mama right there. Am I right? The lady in red. Just think if you landed on a planet. Kind of looks like Joan a little bit, actually, if I'm not mistaken. If you landed on a planet, you found this goddess on this world. It looks like a pretty cool world, too. You got a nice tree there. You got some interesting cliffs, look a little bit like Arizona. But more importantly, super foxy space mama is there. If you haven't checked out John Levi's latest show over on his channel, highly recommended. John does some stellar sleuthing and manages to get a copy of a guide, a visitor's guide to the Chicago World's Fair. And boy, oh boy, is it fucking weird. It is weird. It clearly is some kind of, it's some kind of instruction manual. Like if you got this, you had to do work. Okay. So he probably didn't say this, but I'm filling in the spaces here. So they have all of these buildings that are repurposed. They're repurposed buildings. But what they do is they have all these buildings, which are just mind-blowing buildings, and they name them certain things like the building of industry or the building of commerce or the government building. Of course, they have the incubator baby, but they have all these buildings, right? And then they also have like expositions, or not expositions, but exhibits from other countries. And uh, if you read some of the accounts of the Chicago World's Fair, like there were parts that you didn't see, but they had this one main drag where it was very exotic, super, super. And they had people from, and this is where it gets really weird, okay? They had people supposedly from all over the world in this one area where you would have, let's say, Aborigines from Mexico, Gypsies from Romania, um, Zulu warriors from Africa. They literally had like a street like this, and there was also a lot of alcohol in that street and a lot of food. So for 2 years, people would go onto the street and really kind of live it up, right? But if you look at the idea of like all these different buildings and the things that they represent and the various indigenous cultures that they're trying to um, enlighten people with, what's really going on there? Are they using that whole experience as a place to educate people, like people who are new to the world? And so they go through and then they learn all these different things. They learn about government, they learn about industry, they learn about technology, they learn about medicine, they learn about all these other cultures theoretically. And then this book that John got possession of, it's like a workbook. So if that's true, that they have this work and they have all these different environments and all these different buildings that represent all these different trades and social processes. So what's going on there? I mean, are these like just indoctrination centers repurposed from the original buildings that were there? And again, you can look at some photos. I know I'm going to talk astrology, I promise. But you can look at some photos and it looks like those buildings are being built, right? It looks like it, but maybe they're repurposing those buildings. But even if they were being built, like there's all these other things that are going on there. You have these waterways, I mean, lakes, you have these massive statuary. I mean, it is incredible, incredible. And it's not just Chicago, it's all over the place. So anyway, John had a great show today. Check it out. And I hope he's able to gather more physical material from these World's Fairs. So there's that. And of course, the World's Fair is being a part of the last reset. Last time Uranus was in Taurus, and the last time Neptune was in Pisces. I think the nodes were there too. If you go back to 1849, 1850, True Node, South Node, and it was Cancer Capricorn, if I'm not, or Cancer Capricorn? It was Cancer Capricorn. But by 1850, 1853, everything's changing. Everything's changing. And then the Civil War starts. I have a little bit of a different outlook on the Civil War in some ways. I look at the Civil War more from the Tartarian perspective and essentially destroying these great cities in the south. Because a lot of the Civil War just doesn't make any sense. And I've brought this up on a number of shows. If you were the North and you were General Sherman, why would you want to go through the South and burn everything to the fucking ground? It makes no sense. Because if you were theoretically going into that area to take possession of land, and the most important thing now is the amount of water port access. Because if you go up into go up above the Mason-Dixon line, and you have basically, where would that be? That's just above Virginia. So just above Virginia, you're starting to get into what, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, that area, right? Most of the great deep water ports are below the Mason-Dixon line. So Florida, clearly Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, the Carolinas, like great ports. You have the great ports. You have all of the uh, agriculture with long growing seasons. So if you are the North, why would you go down there and burn everything to the fucking ground? You wouldn't want to do that. You would want to keep those things intact, and you seriously wouldn't want to piss off the people because you have to deal with those people afterwards, so that you wouldn't have another rebellion. I mean, that's what happens when you conquer a land. If you conquer a land, you have to do two things with the people. You have to either just completely wipe out almost every male in the population, so the women are dependent upon what happens with their conquerors in order to carry on their genetic imperative. You literally have to wipe out almost every single eligible male, and that has happened, by the way, in various conquests. And then they'll take the oldest boy, and they'll conscript the oldest boy so that they become part of what they're doing, and it's also some ransom, because if the woman will do what they ask her to do, her boy, and remember it's a boy, her boy will live and then ultimately become assimilated into the new. So that's one way of doing it. But if you're not going to do it that way, and especially when it's your own country, like if it's a country you're fighting against, or like maybe it was the Moors in say Italy, Sardinia, or the Moors in Spain, that's a whole different thing, right? Or even some of the Roman conquests, but not in your own country. So in your own country, you want to say, hey, look, we're one country, and we just wanted to come down here and take care of business and show you guys that you're just morally corrupt, wrong, and we need to liberate the people that you have in bondage. What you don't do is you don't burn everything down. So why do you burn everything down? Why was Sherman on this mission to incinerate the South? I think there's a different reason for just bringing the South to its knees. And again, from a strategic standpoint, you want those cities intact, especially a port city like New Orleans. You don't want to burn it down. You want to be able to access that, right? That's what happens. And even if it's a civil war, they want to go in and establish their territory and start companies. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, back during 1850 to 1851, 1852, 1853, everything changes. Everything changes. And what's interesting is this whole idea of the mud flood, and you look at Neptune and you look at Uranus, and it was muddy and floody. Right, it was muddy. If you look at pictures, you'll see this if you watch Sean's video. Like there are streets that are inside the Columbia Exposition, which is the Chicago World's Fair, and they're just mud. Like they're mud. They're not even paved, right? So you have these weird roads, pathways that are all muddy, and then you have these cities that look like they're from another planet. So anyway, I'm done riffing on that a little, but check John out. It's a really good, and I know a lot of you already do. All right, who else do we have here? Let's see. Marty, what's going on, Marty R? Hi to you. DJ Drea. That was pretty epic, I have to say. There's my man, Charlie Mazak. I did not check out. Oh, you're talking to Tom. Gucci to goats. Robert brought the biscuits right away Friday night. That's funny. That's good. Gucci to goats. I can't wait to have you on my Friday show. I hope you caught last Friday's show for a little bit of inspiration. Shirley, what's going on, Shirley? Speaking of Maryland and ports, MLMCI. That's how amazing it was. Y'all have to. Yeah, I know. We're going to do it again. Heidi Kit, what's going on, Heidi? Let's see. Would love to hear astrology of the housing market over the next 10 years one night. Okay, maybe we could do that. Maybe we could do that. I think the housing market. I think the head realtor of the housing market is Klaus Schwab and Xi Jinping and Bill Gates. Those are your three head realtors. We'll talk about that. Let's see, Loriana, what's going on? Moon Wind 1221. What's going on, Mary? Yeah, I'm a good starry stabilizer for David. Yeah, I would like to say that I ground David, but David is just David's a force, man. You just got to let him go. But yeah, we do connect really well. Susan, no, you're on time. Good for you. Let's see, Guy Travelogue. We got sunflowers and rainbows, geometric sphere, universal intelligence. You modify. you know, it's a funny comment. I think David would be okay with that comment. I was going to read it. You modify David not to be so self-indulgent. Here's what I think. I think that when we get together, I think David gets to have a conversation with another human. And what happens when we're in dialogue with another person is we have to check in with what we're talking about and what our signal is, right? If we're really human, like we're listening and we're trying to have something that's at a higher level between two people. So I think that's what David does. I think he's actually checking in with another human and having that conversation. Like sometimes on my show during the weekday, I can kind of go off, and I'm sure I have my self-indulgence moments. Let's see. Avita Anastasia, what's going on? David Hawk. Good to see you, David. Who else do we have here? Amy M. Woda. That was, yes, agreed. Astro Sam 2022. What's going on? Astro Sam. Avita, let's see. We each have a key. Yes, I would agree. Lee Kress. Hi, Lee. There's the whimsical farm girl checking in from Oregon. Lady Virgo. I think it's what is it? Is it dollar off night for all Lady Virgos here at the Jasper Astro Bar and Lounge? I think that's true. Let's see. Who else do we have? Are we caught up? I think we're caught up. We got Wendy Eater and let's see. JJ Rain. JJ Rain DeBlanc. CC Jones. What is going on, Fran? There's Christine. Hi, Christine. And did I miss anybody? I think we're good. Oh, there's my man, Benito. What's going on, Shadow Man? And there's Squirrel. The house across the street sold for $450,000 last summer and is listed at $850,000 today. Well, I'm sure BlackRock can afford it. That's just a drop in their bucket. Meowgical Catacorn. Experimental Elemental Virgo Rising. You get 50 cents off. Virgo Rising gets 50 cents off all well drinks tonight. All right. There's the Crimmies. What's going on, Chris and Steve? Did I miss Kelly B? I didn't miss her now. There she is. Amira Hayden. Tessa D. What's going on, Tessa Dick? I mentioned I name checked Phil the other night on David's show. I had a total recall. I had a total recall reference there. It's good to see you, Tessa. I hope you're doing well. I should have you back on my show one of these days, just so we can catch up. We'll do that. See what's going on. I hope you're able to write and stay in the game. Jen S is excited to hear about Tulsi. Steve Borg. Howdy, Steve. Pluto Wilson. What's up, back? Am I caught up yet? Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. And Dave Sullivan. Leon Vito, Rinson Radway. What's going on, Leo Vito, Rinson Radway? Good to have you here. Okay, I think we're caught up. Kelly won't make it through the show. Well, I hope you make it through the night, Kelly. It's okay if you don't make it through the show. Karen McQuaid. Karen says he's a Leo. He has magic. Karen must be a Leo. That's what. Robin, first time here. Welcome, Robin. I'm just going back through. I might have missed a few people. Did I? Oh, Audra's Healing Light. We got another Floridian. Jan Augenstein. What's going on, Jan? Hope you and your mom are doing all right. Doing well. More than all right. More than well. How about great? We'll take it up to great. Deborah Donaldson. What's going on, Deborah? Annette L. checking in from Colorado. Ms. Behaving too. I'm an Okie originally, and I want to stay out of that crap, but I don't want to tear down their culture. Whatever that's in reference to, Dave, I'll agree with you. That sounds reasonable. Let's see. Jefferson Davis home is down here in Biloxi. He spent 7 years in prison. Post-Civil War. Susan has arrived from Arizona. Well, she hasn't arrived, but she's in the chat. Hi, Susan. Russell Gill, Arkansas. The people just look lost. Also, I know, don't they? Like they're just walking around in a weird daze, kind of like today, kind of like our current time. People walking around in a daze. But yeah, they just like, what are we doing here? What's going on here? What is this place? Oh. I read where Lincoln said the war was caused by Jesuits. Could be. I'm thinking there's a different, I think there's a different story with the Civil War. I think there's a different story. So here's what I think. I was watching this show. It was a documentary on Link Ray, who is a guitarist, and of course W.C. Ray. No relation, but he'll know exactly where I'm going with this. He did a song called Rumble, and man, what a song. Anyway, Link Ray is part, I think, Choctaw. And so I'm watching this documentary, and I'm thinking it's about Link Ray's life because, man, the guy seems pretty interesting. I'm always intrigued by learning about musicians from other eras, other times. A little bit about him. Turns out to be Choctaw, comes from the South. And then it's a documentary about essentially Native Americans in American music. And it kind of moves around a little bit. Robbie Robertson's in there. They've got a piece on John Trudell, who I used to know a little bit. He was on my show a couple times back in the day. John, very interesting character. And I'll never forget, I went to a screening of his documentary, True. And he talked to the audience afterwards. And this was in Marin County. And he looked around at everybody. This is after Bush was elected. And he said, you're all Indians now. John had no idea how much we'd be Indians in the future, even more so, right? Anyway, there's a section there in this movie where they're down in New Orleans and they're talking to the Neville brothers and they're talking to these guys who are, just the wild Chapatulas and this whole sort of like New Orleans. What would you call it? I mean, it's not Cajun music, right? It's this New Orleans, it's New Orleans sound, like the Neville brothers, Wild Chapatulas, the Meters, that sort of thing, right? So we're looking at the people, like they're focusing on the people, and for all intents and purposes, they look black. Like if you looked at them, they would pass. But really, what they are is they're Native American, right? They're part of a tribe, and I'm like, wow, that's really, really interesting. So this actually fits into the Tartarian model, like that kind of diversity distribution, and in a lot of ways, integration is completely Tartarian, because we're talking about like groups of people that don't fit like a racial or ethnographic stereotype. They're different. And when you look at the Choctaw, you'll see the Cherokee rather, you'll see like people that look classically quote unquote Native American. You'll see people that look classically darker, black, right? You'll see people that have light skin and red hair. And that's all the Cherokee, right? Very, very diverse group, very diverse tribe. They have a written word. I've talked about this before, a written language. So there's a lot going on in that period just before the Civil War and even after the Civil War, because again, we're having like slightly before, but even in the aftermath, these World's Fairs. They're happening. And then we also have all these fires. And these fires are taking out San Francisco and Chicago. And what I think they might have had a fire in Seattle, if I'm not mistaken. These fires are, and they're devastating, right? They're just devastating. If you think about those buildings, now some of them were built with wood because when you like you could see where you'd have the Deadwood style architecture with these little tiny wooden shacks, but then you would see like the Palace of Fine Arts, which, and there was a fire at the Palace of Fine Arts, but it didn't burn it down. Anyway, here, let me show you something. I've been wanting to show this to people. We're going to get into the astrology, I promise, but you know, this is, I'm a little eclectic here. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys, and I hope that that John does a show on this. You got to check this out. Okay, or at least a little segment. Okay, so this is a place called Bolt, B-O-L-D-T, right? B-O-L-D-T, Bolt Castle. This is Bolt Island. What the hell do you think is going on there? What do you think is going on there? Why is that part of the castle in water? Can somebody give me a good answer for that? Maybe there is like another part of that castle that's below the water line. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's what's going on here. And could you imagine like taking materials out and building this stuff? And look around. There's nothing here, right? So the reason why this is also interesting is because it is owned by the Skull and Bones. And you know Skull and Bones, Yale. This is their little island getaway. Isn't that quaint? Now, as far as a castle goes, it's very unusual looking. But here we go. Look at that. They got a stained glass ceiling there. This is the heart of the island. Look at that. Oh, pretty snazzy, huh? Nice brickwork. Get your little antiquitech up here. Check that out. That is Bolt Island. I think that's the castle that is submerged. Look at this stuff. It's mind-blowing, right? There's your little more antiquitech attachments. Pretty cool. I wonder what goes on there. Probably some eyes wide shut shit. And those are real clouds. Remember real clouds? Man, weren't they special? All right. I just wanted to show that to you. Let's get into some astrology. Let's do this. Well, because sometimes if I talk about other stuff too much, people, why do you talk about astrology? I thought this was an astrology show. Somebody was bitching about that with the David show. Why are you talking about politics so much? I thought this was an astrology show. Oh, man. All right. It's coming. It's coming. Here we go. Oh, we got an Aquarian moon. No wonder. So the fire is back in the sky, boys and girls. We got some fire, finally. We got some fire. If I could get away with it, I'd play I've Got the Fire by Montrose right now. Or maybe after this selection, but I can't get away with it. Sammy Hagar. Did you know Sammy Hagar was Lebanese? Did you know Dick Dale was Lebanese? I bet Robin did. All right, there she is. Very interesting chart. Let me throw it up here so you guys can get a gander. That is the chart of the moment. 25 Libra ascendant. So I think we've got an hour or two of being pleasant. Then we'll drop into Scorpio and we'll start talking about death. You think I'm kidding? I'm really not. So the fire is back in the sky. We have the sun at 7 Aries. We haven't had much fire in the sky. We've had Chiron, which is, wounded fire, wounded expression, wounded masculinity, wounded will, vulnerable intentionality. So people are trying to figure out where they can direct their intentionality. Think about it. I mean, it's very difficult to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. It's not impossible, by the way. You could do that. You could direct your intentionality, but it's getting harder. There are some places where you still have to wear a mask or show a passport or a test or whatever, right? So it's limiting to some extent. What about gasoline? $8, $9, $10 a gallon in certain places. Unless you're really rich and you can afford the gas, it limits your movement. Hey, I think I'm going to go see my good friend down in San Luis Obispo, and I'm living up here in Ukiah, California, and I'm going to drive down, and $300 later, you're there. Yeah, maybe we'll Zoom. And that's just kind of where we are now with Chiron in Aries. The other thing with Chiron in Aries is that it really gets into, like, for instance, William Thomas, the swimmer, whom we've talked about on this show a few times. And what is he? He's a wounded male. He's a wounded male. And as a male swimmer, he was ranked 533rd in the country. But as a female swimmer, he was ranked number 1 in the country. So he moved up 532 slots just by reassigning himself. That's Chiron and Aries. It's a wounded man who is going into a competition and competing against women. Unless it's Isaac, what's his name, in which case he's going in the other direction and getting the testosterone, which we talked about. I think it might have been last week. So Chiron and Aries. And Chiron being the wounded healer, and Aries having to do with will, having to do with masculinity, having to do with even things like, I keep hearing just how many losses the Russians are taking. I keep hearing this. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced at all. And so there are things that are happening there. That is a Chiron and Aries moment. I think I should find it. I'll show you a real Chiron and Aries moment in a second, video-wise. But we're seeing that now because Aries is the military. And we've even gotten into like the weird, you can wear your come fuck me pumps and be a part of today's military, right? I mean, that's Chiron and Aries. It's like, yeah, sure. We'll take you. Come on in. Join the party. Pete Buttigieg will be your commander-in-chief here, or your general, your party general. Meanwhile, if you look at China, they're like pumping their dudes full of testosterone. They've got their little super soldier program going on. I mean, that is what they're doing. I can guarantee you right now, China, which has very different standards and values around scientific experimentation, are playing around with gene CRISPR technology, and they're going in and they are using couples and having experiments, and they're altering the genes of male boys, maybe females too, to create super soldiers. It's happening. We do it here, but we do it like underground, literally underground. The Chinese are much more above ground when they do this stuff. But again, Chiron and Aries, like, oh, well, isn't Russia? Boy, they are so vulnerable now. Why don't we go attack them? Yeah, let's attack them. They're getting their ass kicked. Boy, it's just going to be mop up city. Yeah, right. Isn't that what we're hearing? We're hearing that. And, when we look at these planets, we look at Mercury, we look at Chiron, like what is going on with Mercury? We got the conjunction with the sun, and then we have, what is that? Where's the moon? Yeah, it's a semi-sextile with the moon with Mercury, a minor aspect, but even a semi-sextile, especially, and that's just like now, in 2 days that moon will be in Pisces, and it won't even be a semi-sextile. So what do we have here in Mercury? We got a conjunction. It's a wide conjunction, but it's separating from Neptune. And now that it's in this first degree, and even yesterday at 0, when it was closer to Neptune, that is the fog of war. This is what we are dealing with. We're dealing with the fog of war. We don't know what's going on. There are things that are happening, but we don't know completely what's going on. What we do know is that we have somebody who's over in Europe who is supposedly the president, and he's basically saying that Putin cannot remain in power, and that we're going to have to take him out, or we're going to have to, I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but essentially what he's doing is he's declaring war on Russia and Putin. And some people go, oh, good. Do you understand what that means? Do you really understand what that means? Even if he doesn't follow through, how do you think the Russians and whoever running the Russians, the Russian army, we've looked at Putin's chart. I have no idea what is going on with Putin. He could be one of 5 or 6 guys. He could be a clone, a robot. Who knows? Again, fog of war. Supposedly he has rectal cancer or stomach cancer. I think it's a stomach cancer or something like that. And he's running everything from the Urals, which is their version of the Rocky Mountains, and he could go. I've heard he's dead. So the fog of war doesn't give us a lot of answers. But when Joe Biden steps out on a line like that and starts to bark at Putin, even if you're not Putin, let's say you're an American general, what are you going to do with something like that? Do you think an American general is going to go, yeah, let's go. Let's throw down some troops. Let's take him out. Let's do that, man. Let's do that. Come on, let's go, Joe. They'll do what they're told because they have to. He supposedly is the commander in chief. And again, supposedly they're in Poland. But what do we really know? What do we really know? Now, with Mercury at 0 degrees, what are we going to get? We're going to get aggressive language, aggressive talk. And over the course of the next few days here, right, Mercury's always a little bit faster than the sun. It eventually catches up to the sun. It'll move beyond the sun until it goes retrograde again. So Mercury's going to catch up to the sun. We're going to have a Sun-Mercury conjunction by next week. By the time we're here on Sunday night next week, it'll be in orb. And the rhetoric, I think, will be extremely high. Extremely high, extremely hot. And then we have Mercury marching towards Chiron, where actually speaking without thinking, has extreme consequences, especially if you perceive that you're hurt and or wounded, or you perceive that the person that you're in conflict with is an easy mark and you can take him out. That would be a mistake. So here we are. We haven't had fire in the sky since, what was that, Jasper? December with Sagittarius. And now we have it. We kind of have it in spades here with Mercury, Sun, Chiron. Venus is way behind the party. At the end of May, Mars moves into Aries. David and I talked about that. That's going to be wow. That's going to be a wow, especially when Mars conjuncts Chiron. And we have perhaps casualties of war, right? Or the casualties of violence. Isn't it amazing how here we are theoretically ready to go throw down and ready to go send our boys and girls theoretically over to Ukraine. Clearly people have volunteered. And at one point in time, there used to be an anti-war movement in this country until the neocons got a hold of it and summarily sacrificed it on 9/11/2001. You know, it's really an interesting little piece there. It's an interesting piece that there was an anti-war movement. People didn't want to go to war. And after 9/11/2001, it has been one long bloodthirsty cry for defending America's interests abroad and regime change, brought to you by the neocons. And they're there again. They are there again, and they are running their propaganda machine like the printing press that was printing fake bills in Minneapolis for George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. Right? That's how fast they're running the propaganda. Their propaganda is almost as fast as the rising national debt. I mean, that's how fast it is. Every day it's. I saw what's his name, David Petraeus. They brought David fucking Petraeus out to talk about what's going on in Ukraine and what we need to do. And it's like, oh yeah, let's talk to him. David Petraeus, if I'm not mistaken, like there's really a lot of there's some controversy about how much real combat David Petraeus was involved in. Supposedly he got a Purple Heart, but even that is questionable. Like there's a lot of really questionable, like it's almost like borderline stolen valor. But David Petraeus gave the keys of the kingdom to Fred Kagan and his wife, Kimberly Kagan. And they were advising him during this war. These people have never been in a fucking war. He gave them top level clearance to civilians, top level clearance. And they are advising him on how to fight a fucking war. Just because they have something called the Institute for War. It was just bizarre. Anyway, they brought him back out and he's selling the war again. Well, why is he selling the war? It's because he's indebted to the people and he's probably getting paid who supported him during his life. He wanted to be president. David Petraeus wanted to be president. He was doing everything in his power to become president. He came home from the war. This guy, John Allen, replaced him. Guess what? Obama makes him the head of the CIA. And then it comes out that Paula Broderick, who was his biographer in Iraq, like he was banging her. And as soon as the book comes out, she dumps him. She totally dumps him. And I think Paul Broderick was military at one point in time too. They were like into each other. They'd go jogging and running and she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pump this guy. I'm gonna get this book out and I'm literally figuratively pump him, and then when it's done, I'm gonna dump him. And that was it. Once that happened, he was toast. I think he had to step down from the CIA. Petraeus is a Scorpio. Petraeus, Michael Petraeus, or David Petraeus is a Scorpio. He's into power. He was into power. He wanted to be president. He's too short to be president. And this is no slight to anybody who happens to be on the short side. Maybe we need a short president because all the tall ones fuck up. Although Trump was tall, I would say Trump is 50. Look, I don't want to get into a Trump thing because compared to this guy and this thing, he's fucking Thomas Jefferson, okay? But maybe we need a short guy. Jasper. How about Jasper for president? So Petraeus was doing everything he could, including siding up to the Kagans, who, of course, were connected to the Ziocon Republican establishment, not just Republican, but also the left, because they come out of the left. And they are also very much connected to other intelligence agencies, including our friends in the Middle East. And it's always important and good to have them on your side if you're running for election, but it all backfired on him. But there he is again. Now he's out selling the war. And there's this whole idea that they are trying to turn Putin into somebody who's bumbling. People are breaking ranks and losing, and they're basically going to say we've softened them up. The Ukrainians softened them up, and now we could go in and finish the job. That's Chiron and Aries, especially with Mercury in a wide conjunction with Neptune. Don't believe everything you read. All right, let me show you a Chiron and Aries moment. This is a pretty wicked, as they say in Massachusetts. Chiron and Aries moment. So I can just find it here. I'm gonna have to do some magic. Maybe Peter Dinklage should run for president. Was he almost like president or some sort of king in Game of Thrones? Peter Dinklage for president. How would you like to be his size and have the last name of Dinklage? You gotta hand it to the guy. He didn't change his last name. You know what I mean? I'm gonna wear Dink. I'm gonna wear that name. Good for you. Okay. Let's see. Russia's backing their currency, rubles, with gold. Well, we knew that was coming. Do we have a, hold on a second. I got to find this one. There's so many of these. No. Head of Ukraine military med service says the order was given to castrate Russian POWs because they're cockroaches. I don't know if that's true or not. Let's see. I got to find this one thing. Give me 1 second. Some of the stuff I am just not going to show you because some of it is really bad. Really, really bad. Okay, let's see. All right. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, here we go. I found it. So this is supposedly an Azov commander in Mariupol. and he was captured. This is Chiron in Aries. You want to see Chiron in Aries? This is Chiron in Aries. This is an iteration of Chiron in Aries right here. So supposedly this is Mariupol, and this is an Azov commander who is the Azov commandos are they're Nazis. They're real Nazis. And when we think of Nazis, what do we think of? We think of Aries and the whole Aryan trip. So this is a Chiron and Aries moment right here. Here we go. So they're going to parade him through the streets. This is a captured Azov commander. This is Chiron and Aries. This is humiliation. Right here. And if I'm not mistaken, these are the resistance forces that are in eastern Ukraine. That's vulnerable right there. That's your Chiron and Aries. I'm going to end it there. Okay, you can get the gist of it, right? You can get the gist of it. That's exactly what we're talking about. And the reason I'm going to end is they start beating them up. And even the women are getting punches in. Swear to God. Some of those are like, let me get a lick in here. And we're just getting started. You know, wait till we get Mars revved up at the end of May. And the whole thing is just fucking nuts. It's just nuts. There was a time where we had people who were actually diplomats, and there were things like a peace process. Do you think Anthony Blinken wants anything to do with peace? No, not at all. Why? It's because this is the neocons' war. Why is it their war? Well, that's because Vicky Nuland regime changed along with her husband, Robert Kagan. They regime changed Ukraine. She's back again. Coincidence? I think not. So, what else do we have here? Here comes Jupiter. Jupiter and Neptune. Has anybody been feeling more mystical lately? I'm not saying I'm feeling more mystical, but I'm feeling the need to be more mystical. I have Jupiter simultaneously trining my ascendant and squaring my own Jupiter. Interesting. I also have Neptune squaring my own Jupiter. But I've been thinking a lot about this, and I mentioned it on David's show on Friday. And it has to do with this idea that what we need on a planetary level is a near-death experience. And with Jupiter, Neptune coming into conjunction, and it's pretty rare, especially in Pisces, as David noted, 1856 the last time we had this. Yeah, there was a lot of fog of war. There was a lot of propaganda, theoretically, right? But it's one of those aspects where I think the veils can get really thin. Really, really thin. And when the veils are thin, then our ability to perceive our so-called reality goes to an interesting place. And I keep thinking, right? I keep thinking that if we could have this planetary moment where literally we are taken out of space-time. We're taken out of space-time, just like a near-death experience. And we have this realization that our consciousness is local and it is expansive and spatial, and that we are connected to everything, right? We just need that little moment out of time. So a long time ago, there was this guy on Coast to Coast. Some of you probably familiar with him. His name is Randall Winters. And Randall Winters was, what's his name? Billy Meyer, Contact with the Pleiades. So his book looks like it was, a little fakey. I remember seeing that book for the first time. I was like, wow, man, this shit's interesting. But he went on to Art Bell. He was on the Art Bell show a couple times. And one of the things that was interesting, because he said that he had been with the Pleiadians, like the Pleiadians had taken him off planet. Is that right? Pleiades? No. Sirius. It was Sirius. I think it was Sirius. You see Billy Meyer. I'm getting him confused with I think it was Pleiades. Yeah, it was Pleiades. Anyway, he said that on the Pleiades, an individual at a certain point in time is taken out of space-time. Like it's part of their initiatory process, whatever their version of space-time is. They're taken out of space-time, and then they realize who they are and what their place is in the entire cosmos. So as an exercise, according to Randall Winters, that is not uncommon. And if you look at like the tribes in Central Africa who use iboga, so they have an iboga ritual, which is what they do when they're young. They have an iboga. Iboga is a plant. It grows in Central. It's the only hallucinogenic plant, by the way, in Africa. Africa does not have psilocybin. So iboga is the only hallucinogenic plant. And there are a number of tribes in Central Africa that take iboga. Some of them are good. Some of the other there are a few tribes that use it for more malevolent purposes, interestingly enough. But one of the good tribes called the Bwiti, Bwiti, they use iboga. So when you're young, you are taken through the initiation and you get to meet iboga, which is the spirit of the plant and the overlighting spirit of the tribe. And guess what you get to do? You get to find your place in the tribe. You are connected with your own destiny and who you are and how you interrelate with everybody in that tribe. That's what happens. That's not too far afield from what I'm talking about. And that's ultimately what we need. And I just wonder, how some people would handle something like that. Could everybody handle that? And I don't think everybody can handle it. But if we're going to have a chance at this at a metaphysical level, we need this thing. We need it to happen because it would fuck with everything that these people are doing. If we just all of a sudden had that moment and we just looked around and said, wow, did you see that? Did you experience that? And not only just that, but you would be changed, fundamentally changed. And think of what people would do. I mean, would people go back to work? Would they turn their TVs on? No, I don't think so. And in order to integrate this experience, thinking that there is a wise and omniscient and beneficent God, which is the subatomic structure of everything in the physical universe and all the other dimensions that we can't always perceive, that we would have an experience when we come back where we'd be altered, and that over time, incrementally, new things would occur with us. And those things would occur with us in proportion and scale to how we would evolve as individuals. So if you were cool and you were loving and you were grounded and you were in the spirit of the event that had taken place on a consistent basis, you'd get more good stuff. You'd level up a little bit at a time. And so the people that would do that and get that, they'd be like, okay, wow, we have some interesting things here. We can talk to animals. We can listen to them. We're hearing the trees as vibrational sound frequency, leaves as music, but just slightly, right? Just slightly and increasing. And okay, well, what do we want to do with our world now? The other people look around and go, okay, well, what's going on with these people? Why are they having this experience? Well, it's because they're actually staying close to the spirit of the original experience. I mean, if we just stay in that space, we get more. Yeah, how about that? Okay, I'm down with that. So that's, I think, what we need in this Jupiter Neptune conjunction. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe a minor version of it can happen. Maybe there's the potential for you in your own way to step out of time space. And it's coming up fast. Was it next week? Jupiter is going to be also in sextile with Pluto. So this big energy, really, really big energy. I like it. I think it's good for us. But the downside, of course, because we're dealing with some duality here, is propaganda and hype. I mean, that's unfortunately the challenge is the propaganda, hype, and the fog of war. So on an individual level this week, because a lot of times people want to know, well, how does this affect me? Like, what can I do with this energy as we move forward? Well, the sun is now on a path where it's going to start to move into sextile with Mars and Venus and Saturn. And those are all in Aquarius because the sun is going to be a little bit faster than Mars. More faster than Mars, a little bit faster than Venus, and certainly faster than Saturn. So we're gonna see this here, right? And I would say by middle of next week, the sun is starting to move more to certainly it's in kind of a wide sextile with Mars now if you're using wide orbs. So here's what I would say. Think of this as preparation. Think of this as a preparation kind of moment for next week. Like, how can you use this Aries energy, which is all about initiation in springtime, passion, the exercise of your own individual will, and how could you do it in a way that links you up with other people? Because again, it's kind of a model of what I've been talking about. Because Aquarius is the collective. It is this idea of group intelligence and group mind. And Aries is individual. So over the course of the next week, there's the potential for this energy to be activated. So again, with astrology, I think you want to know your chart and you want to know, well, where is Aries in your chart? Figure out what house it's in. And then you look at that and go, okay, all right, I can see that. I can see that. Let's say you have Aries in ninth house. Let's call it the ninth house, which would make you a Leo rising? Is that right? So Leo, we have over here Virgo. No, Pisces, Aries, right? Aries would be here, right there. So you'd be, yeah, because if Libra's here, Aries is here. I'm sorry, I'm having a senior moment. Virgo, Pisces, Aries. Yeah, Leo. I'm just looking at David's chart where he's got Saturn, Mars on his midheaven. Anyway, let's say you have Aries in your ninth house. That means you're going to have these Aquarian planets in your seventh house. So you're dealing with relationship, you're dealing with partnership, which is interesting and just in and of itself right now. And then you have the sun up here, which is igniting this area in your chart. So you'd want to think about how you could use the most expansive, the most expressive, sort of the biggest picture energy, and have it connect with your relationships and take the lead. I mean, that's really what that would be about. How can you take the lead in what would essentially be a sextile happening over here? And how do you take the lead without being uber dominant? Well, Aries demonstrates. That's what Aries does. It demonstrates. Doesn't always talk. It demonstrates. So you'd have to demonstrate leadership. You'd have to demonstrate in the ninth house principles. You would stand for principles, and that your relationships over here in the seventh house would be able to reap the benefit of that, right? So knowing your chart, or at least knowing your houses, would be, a good thing. It would be a very good thing. And that's how you work with Aries. It's intentional energy. It's funny. Willie Nelson does this song called, what is it? Thought becomes energy, right? That's an Aries. That is an Aries maxim. Thought becomes energy. So wherever this is showing up in your chart, especially by the time we get to next week, we're going to have Jupiter, Neptune conjuncting. We're going to have the sun in sextile with Venus and sextile with Mars and Saturn. Next week is a big week. Not that this week is insignificant. Like this week, we've got some friction. We have the Mars Uranus square. We have the Venus. It's separating a bit, right? 9 degrees tonight. So by the time Monday rolls around, the Venus square to Uranus is starting to level off a little bit. But we do have that Mars square to Uranus, and that energy was actually more explosive earlier in the week, Thursday, Friday. Probably when Biden came out and said, we got to burn Russia down, regime change it, and get that madman out of office. That would have been a Mars Uranus square moment. So we're moving away a little bit from this conflict, right? Venus is separating, Saturn is separating. But you know what, though? While these planets were in square with Uranus, what happened? All this war shit ramped up. That's exactly what happened. And it's global. And David and I talked about this. We talked about Zelensky and Venus, Mars, and his sun in Aquarius. And Sean Penn said that he would smelt his Oscar if Zelensky wasn't there. Well, of course he'd smelt his. He's a great actor. Zelensky is the best actor president since Ronald Reagan. By the way, they're both Aquarians. Go ahead and smelt your Oscar, Sean. Smelt your Oscar. By the way, if you happen to not like Sean Penn, just watch U-Turn by Oliver Stone. I know Oliver Stone is an interesting character. He's really smart. He's a Virgo. And there was a time where he did really good movies. And then he went nuts. And he went nuts when he was doing that movie On Any Sunday. And there were stories about him and Cameron Diaz, who I think is a Virgo too. I think they're both Virgos. I could be wrong. Pretty sure she's a Virgo. Anyway, there were stories about him and Cameron Diaz like going out on the town a lot and just, fucking getting high and when I say high, cocaine, and that's on the record, by the way. And a friend of mine who's a composer, he's a good composer. He actually did the soundtrack for that movie. He knows shit about football, but he had an appointment with Oliver Stone to talk with him about doing the soundtrack for the movie. And Stone had just gotten out of jail. He told me the story. And Stone had just gotten out of jail. I mean, you could look at it. His name is Richard Horowitz. You could look up the movie. His name is on the credits. And Richard told me that Oliver Stone had just been let out of jail, and he'd been like fucking wasted, drinking, right? And he forgot that Richard Horowitz was there to talk about doing the score for this movie. And he goes there, and Stone is so wrung out and hung over. He just hires him on the spot because he doesn't want to deal with it. He just says, "You're hired. You're sure you're hired? Just go see the secretary. Have her call my lawyer. Drop a contract." But that was it. You shut the door, probably turn the lights out. So Oliver Stone is an interesting character. Anyway, his movie, of course, on Ukraine was a fire, right? Total fire. Absolute fire. So where was I going with that? Oh, Sean Penn. Yeah, he did U-Turn with Sean Penn. If you haven't seen U-Turn, it's a trip. And Sean Penn, it's ultimately one long humiliation ritual for Sean Penn. I swear to God. Yeah, that's right. So we're in this really collective energy place. And these are some of the things that David and I talked about on Friday night. These are all collective planets. Neptune, Jupiter, we are in the pitch of collectivity. We are connected to the global brain, or at least the stand-in for the global brain. By the way, shout out to Michael Gosney, who is apparently on a journey out of his body. He's I just got a text from a good friend of mine who's on a Zoom call with a bunch of people. I don't know if any of you know who Michael is, but I knew Michael back in the 90s, and he came out of the computer graphic art world. He had a publishing, there was a web publishing company called Verbum. And then he started a kind of a scene in San Francisco called Radio V. It was all connected to like Goa trance music and what else? Like it's not just Goa trance, but like yeah, mostly Goa trance. Although some other music kind of seeped in, drum and bass. There was a whole drum and bass scene in San Francisco. And he had this thing called Radio V, and he had these soirees, and he was connected to this group called Earth Dance. And Earth Dance being this kind of global organization, and they'd have a global meditation, like a prayer for peace that would all happen simultaneously. So Michael was connected into that world with Chris from Medicine Drum. And like Michael is transitioning now. So Michael, I wish you all the best. Have a great journey. Great journey. And, you know, that's where we are. We're living in this really collective period. And it's not just the outer planets here, even though we do have some individual stake with Aries, by the way, which is quite interesting. There's a lot of death happening. There's a lot of people that are dying. Have you noticed that? And if you go back in time, I could probably pull something out here. And I was going to talk about it. If you go back in time, the image of the Grim Reaper is connected to Saturn. Saturn is the Reaper of souls. Remember now, they didn't have Pluto back then. Back in the time where pre-Neptune, pre-Uranus, pre-Pluto, the astrological world stopped at Saturn. and is visible, right? Saturn is visible. All those other planets were invisible, which is why they didn't know they were there. And then they became visible. So the world stopped at Saturn. Saturn was the gateway to whatever was beyond it. And so therefore, it did play the role of the reaper of souls, right? That's what Saturn was about. And that's where Saturn gets its reputation of being a malefic. It's because of that. Other things, but mostly because of that. Your time was up. If you look at the movie The Seventh Seal, Max von Sydow is playing a game of chess. He's playing a game of chess with death, right? And what is it about? Time. Saturn rules time. So here we are at the 28th degree of Pluto. And once Pluto and Saturn conjuncted at 25 degrees, time was up. It was over. That was in January of 2020. And we knew it. We knew it was coming. So everything from January 2020 until now, we've been living in this interregnum. Really, since, well, let's just call it March 13th, the 2-year anniversary. And I talked about this and have been talking about this, where we've been in this thing called the Janus ritual, which has to do with the two-faced God and the idea that we wear masks, because there's also this connection with the faces of comedy and tragedy, which are masks. And so that's what happened. We wore masks during the Janus ritual. And the Janus ritual usually happens during a time of war. And that's what took place. It was the war against America. It was the Purple Revolution. It was the regime change. David and I talked about that on Friday night. And then the masks come off. And there's a new world, right? When the masks come off. That's supposedly how the Janus ritual works. You walk in one way and you come out the other way, and you are essentially changed. And the world is different when you emerge. And that's, look at the world now. Now all of a sudden we've got the winds of war circulating through our press, our media, our everyday conversation. There's that. We also have talk of shortages, food shortages, oil shortages, gas shortages, fertilizer shortages. That stuff wasn't there prior to 3/11/2020. This is now the new world, right? So that interregnum, that 2-year period, when time stopped, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, it's moving forward now. They want people, they being Biden, they want people to drive their cars back to work. Oh, we want you back in the office. Yeah, so we can blow what money we have on your fucking $10 a gallon gas. It's true. It's like, yeah, the stay-at-home thing, yeah, it's over now. Come on back. We want America back to work. No, what you want is you want people to get back in their cars and spend a shit ton of money on gas. That's the new world, right? They want to move us in. And even when Biden gave his speech, his State of the Union speech, he was basically, grafting Trump. He was doing Trump's material. Like even Biden and the Biden administration, the Democrats came out of that Janus ritual like, we're the fucking Americans. We're the fucking patriots. It was like they just came out the other side, and that's who they were. And you look at their messaging now. It's all about, we're the real Americans. We're the true Americans. Those other guys, they're Nazis. We're the real Americans. Janus ritual. That's the new world. They flipped it. That's what happens with the Janus ritual. So for the week ahead, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, cats and dogs, all sentient beings, I believe that we should be treating each other kindly, right? Jupiter Neptune conjunction can go a long way for being kind and empathic. If you have to welcome somebody back into your life who had dissed you, who had shunned you, this could be a good week to do it with the Jupiter Neptune conjunction leading up to next week. Like that stuff is palpable. If you have gone through disagreements or you have had the experience of having to deal with people that cut you out or whatever, right? Jupiter Neptune conjunction can be a healing balm. Forgiveness can go a long way. Now, what's interesting is that you don't have to sacrifice your own individual perspective, your own individuality. You can still remain strong in your individuality, wherever Aries is showing up in your chart. But it's not at the exclusion. It is not at the exclusion of what's going on. You know, it's really interesting, right? We have Taurus, Aries, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, and Capricorn, right? All these, all these planets in these four signs, are really from the 10th, the 11th, the 12th, the 1st, and the 2nd. Right there. So it's a very interesting time, AstroLive. Everything's kind of bunched up. There's not, with the exception of the Uranus square. And again, these Uranus squares are going to resolve themselves. Tomorrow you'll wake up and the moon will be in Aquarius. It'll still be squaring Uranus. Watch your driving tomorrow. There could be restlessness and people just, wanting a different kind of emotional experience. Right? With the moon Uranus square. Oh, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I wonder how many people will quit their jobs tomorrow. Say, fuck it, I'm done. I'm out of here. I think you could see that with moon Uranus square, especially with the moon in this position, because it's about as balsamic as it could get with and still have an hard aspect to Uranus, at least now. Like it'll be really balsamic when it moves into Pisces. So it's kind of reaching the end of a cycle, right? That's where we are with the moon. Started off here, new in Aries. We're all gung-ho, go around the chart. It's like, I don't know about that job. Kind of over it. Kind of over having to. Oh, you want me to come back and you want me to come back in the office? You want me to drive 40 miles now? Just like everybody else? I don't think so. But that said, right? That said, we have just this very interesting bunched up, like in astrology, this would be called a bundle chart. And people that have bundle charts have very specific kinds of lives, right? It's almost like they're savants in some ways. Like they have nothing else in their life except for what's going on with the bundle. And I think one of the favorite bundle charts that I've looked at is Katy Perry, who's just like 12th, 1st, and 2nd. That's it. That's it. She's all about self-expression, figuring out who she is, right? Whoever is pulling her levers in the 12th house and dealing with 12th house issues. And then the 2nd house is money. That's it. That is all Katy Perry has. There's not a lot going on. So a bundle chart can be really good for people that are just super focused on one thing, but it doesn't necessarily make them very well-rounded. There's nothing wrong with that. If you are just here to do one thing and just do it well or to the best of your ability, and who says you need to be really, really well-rounded? Sometimes people who just do one thing are just fucking great at it. And everything else are just like, okay, well, it's not a big deal, right? And we kind of have that a little bit. We kind of have that. And as we look at some of these planets, right, when the sun and Mercury, because Uranus is there and it's moving slow. So we're going to have the sun, we're going to have Mercury beginning to move in conjunct, or move into that Taurus space. And that's going to happen in less than a month from now. Uranus will still be here. It'll be close. It might be what, it'll be 15 degrees, 16 degrees. But these planets are going to be right there. And then you're going to have these Piscean planets. And then you're going to see Venus and Mars catch up. And Venus and Mars will catch up and they'll be in Pisces. So everything will start to get bunched even tighter, right? Even tighter here. Eventually you'll have Venus and Mars in Aries. That'll be at the end of May. So that's 2 months out. So we're in this really interesting kind of quadrant where there's some connection to individuality and the self. And then there's all this other stuff going on with the collective. And it's really tight and focused, and will be tight and focused all the way up through the end of May. When the sun moves into Gemini, things I think will spread out a bit more, right? Sun, Venus, eventually will catch up their Mercury. So we'll begin to have more of these potential for angles that are going to be oppositional, right? But right now, I mean, we're dealing with these hard squares, these hard conjunctions, and the symphony of little sextiles. So it's a very interesting time. And so just from like your own perspective, figure out where these planets are in your chart. That's where you should be focusing. That's where the energy is. Focus on that area of your chart. For the next week or two, like become a savant. Just focus on those areas. Try that. So for me, it would be 6th house, 5th house, 4th house, 3rd house. That's it. So if I focus on just those areas, whatever's showing up there, then I have a better chance of tapping into the energy and having those houses be more functional and lit up, which means that the houses that are in the oppositional place get better, since astrology is a dual game. So try that, okay? This is an astrological exercise for each and every one of you. Figure out where this quadrant is in your chart. It's actually a little more than a quadrant. This is a quadrant. This takes it out of the quadrant. But figure out where it is in your chart. And just go, okay, I'm going to put energy there. I'm going to put energy in these 4 houses. And this is what it's going to look like. Or this is what I think it's going to look like. And then I'm going to move that energy into that area. Try it. Could be interesting. Okay. Better than me telling you what's up, right? You can figure it out for yourself. Should we talk a little Tulsi Gabbard? Tulsi Gabbard's a trip. I'm on the record that I don't really trust. Look, I don't really trust anybody in that world unless I meet them. And even when I meet them, you never know. You never know really who they are. But so I did have an interesting experience today. And the only reason I'm talking about this is because, like, I know the what do you call him? The ex-state representative here for this area for the state of Texas, Kyle Biederman. And I know Kyle. He's an interesting character. I know him, and he did pretty decently for us here, right? So I know him a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm really good friends with Kyle or tight with Kyle, but I go into his hardware store and I buy shit, right? Because I'd rather support his hardware store than Walmart. You know why? Because I can have a fucking conversation with the checker at Ace Hardware. Imagine that. Walmart, I'm talking to C-3PO as I check out. So today, my conversation with the woman checking me out at Walmart, not Walmart, Biederman's Ace Hardware, she told me she watches my daily show. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And she said, I just love what you do. Just an older woman. I'm like, oh, thanks. You know, then she said, I go for you. I go to you to get my news. And then she told me she's a subscriber. I was like, it was really cool, right? It was really cool just to kind of have that little interaction. See, that's what happens when you get to interact with humans versus some fucking, C3PO that's going to check you out. That's Aries energy. That's personal, right? It's very personal. It's about as personal as it gets. So I know Kyle. He's okay, right? I know I've met Chip Roy. I like Chip. I think Chip's a good man. I like what he says when he's in Washington. He doesn't mince a lot of words. But I'd really like Chip to talk about, why Biden's not living at the White House. Why this whole thing is staged. I'd love for them to talk about that. Like, that's what we should be talking about. But I never hear any of these guys talk about it. So even though I like Chip and I've met Chip, and he seems like a really good, and he's anti-vaccine. Just he's on the record with that. He beat cancer. When he came to speak to us here in town, brought his kids. He's like a good guy, right? I still don't trust him. I don't trust politicians. It's the way it is, right? But that said, we have to be able to build bonds and trust with other people. That's important, right? We've got to have this relationship between like the black pill and the red pill, and not the purple pill. We have to have a relationship between them so that we don't cut ourselves off from just being completely cynical, completely shut down, and just and have like an open channel and access to another individual. So that brings me back to Tulsi Gabbard, who I don't trust. Although I'm sure if I met her, like, she might be really cool. She might be, but she's one of Klaus Schwab's girls. I again, she's one of his future leaders, and she's being propped up by Fox News. She's getting a lot of screen time. She had a little beef with Mitt Romney, who has the weirdest ears. Have you ever seen his ears? I bet you haven't, because they're hard to find. They're these small little, like, pieces of, I don't know, Mr. Potato Head had bigger ears than Mitt Romney. Seriously. Mr. Potato Head had some ears. His ears are bigger than Mitt Romney if you look at him. So I don't trust Tulsi. She's also ex-military, and she's hung out with the Weinstein brothers, and she's part of that whole Black Horse thing and Dark Horse, whatever they call themselves. I forget. So I think Tulsi Gabbard is somebody that they're grooming. They're grooming her for a specific. This is just my own belief. They're grooming her for a specific purpose. David and I talked about this. And Tulsi Gabbard could be that person who is outside of the polarity. Oh, you don't like the hardline Republicans. You don't like the MAGA heads. Oh, and you don't like the socially deranged Marxist left. Well, we have an answer for you, and it's Tulsi Gabbard, and she's sitting right in the middle. And she kind of has that chart, right? I'm going to show you something about her chart. Tulsi, where are you? Okay. We were just here. Let me find her. Tulsi, Tulsi, Tulsi. I just had you here. Where'd you go? There you are. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something I don't normally do here. I'm going to throw in another aspect for her. Ha! My instincts were right. Okay, here we go. Miss Tulsi Gabbard's chart. So I talked about this with David, and she has a pretty typical seesaw chart. Now, I don't know her birth time, so I just gave her a sunrise time, so it's 6 a.m. But look what we have here. She's got Mercury in Aries. So in 6 days, she's going to have her Mercury return. That'll be interesting to see what happens and what she says. So mark this day, which is Sunday. So Friday and Saturday, keep your eye on Tulsi Gabbard, just in terms of what she has to say. She's coming up on her solar return as well. So she's born April 12th. So we have Mercury here at 7 degrees. And we have Aries, of course, at 14 degrees. And it's, kind of this midpoint between Mercury and her sun. And we know that Aries represents discordia. It represents some form of chaos, and it comes in the form of a woman. So that's kind of interesting. And she's got this Sun-Mars conjunction. Now, what's also interesting about Tulsi is if you look at the progression of the planets, well, what do we see out in front of the sun? Venus. Hey, she's pretty. Tulsi Gabbard is an attractive woman. And you get the Venus, right? Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries is sexy. It's a hot Venus. And then there's the sun right behind it. So it gives it a little more sizzle. But this is what you see, right? You see kind of the, Venus being the ruler of Libra, more relational theoretically, right? But she's not afraid of conflict. Like she whooped Kamala Harris's ass in the debate, whooped her ass. And I knew it was going to happen. If you go back to my my channel, I actually talked about it before it happened. I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to see this. You remember when you were a kid in like junior high? Okay, now I'm going to admit something here that is probably going to. I hope it doesn't like give me the male version of the Scarlet Letter. But when I was a kid, and I'm not the only one, okay? When girls fought in school, people were into it, right? Like when guys fought, people would watch a fight. And it was primal. Nobody tried to break it up. Somebody liked one person and like the other person, they were like, right? So a fight was always something that got some attention. But a girls fight, now that was some shit. Because number one, if two girls are fighting, they're really fucking pissed off. Really pissed off. And if they're fighting, they're pulling hair. Like you might even see somebody get their shirt ripped off. You're 13 years old, like it's kind of in the consciousness, right? I'm just saying. That's kind of a school age thing. The girl fights were always because they were infrequent, and they were fucking mean. You get these cat fights. So I saw that with Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris. I'm like, oh, there's going to be a cat fight. There's going to be a cat fight in one of these debates. It's going to get good. And that's exactly what happened. She kicked their ass. Good. And that set her up. But she didn't have enough money. But Kamala never recovered from that. So even though Tulsi has this nice Venusian appearance, she's got some sex appeal, she's a fucking killer. She's a killer. She's got Mars right behind her sun. Right? And what is Mars doing? Both Mars and the sun and Venus are in opposition with Pluto. By the way, if I were Tulsi Gabbard's husband, I'd really be on my toes. So there's this aspect called the Widowmaker. It's the Venus-Pluto opposition. And she's got it. She's got it. Watch out, Mr. Gabbard. But also, all that Aries energy in opposition, you got Mars and the sun. Wow. Like Tulsi Gabbard she's back here, she's La Femme Nikit. Right? Up front here, she's Miss Meet and Greet. Tulsi's a killer. I mean that in a metaphorical sense. But she fucking killed Kamala Harris. She did. She literally slit her throat on that debate. Kamala Harris never recovered. Kamala Harris is a Libra. She's a Libra. So her planets are opposite Tulsi Gabbard. So let's just look here. We've got Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. They're all in Libra, right? And they're big planets. So you have this kind of seesaw action going on in her chart. She's a warrior. She's a peacemaker. Warrior and a peacemaker. Now, you can even throw in Neptune as part of that seesaw action, right? Because we have Chiron down here. And people who have seesaw charts tend to have challenges because they have a lot of oppositions. And sometimes they're over here, and sometimes over here, and sometimes over here, and then sometimes over here. And that can be challenging. It can literally tear the person in two. And I'll tell you exactly who has a seesaw chart. Let me just do this. I think I could do it back. I'll do a search here, and I'll show you another seesaw chart. And I talked with David about this. We'll go back here. And Whitney's got another seesaw chart, right? She's got all these planets over here, and then she's got these planets over here. She's got a seesaw chart. And what happened to Whitney Houston? It tore her apart. It tore her apart. You know, she couldn't bring everything together in her life. And when she would try to find the midpoint, which would be Neptune, boy, is that challenging. Especially when you've got Neptune squaring Venus and the sun and squaring Saturn, getting fucked over by Clive Davis. I mean, that is a hard way to resolve that seesaw. Very, very difficult. I'll never forget, I saw Bobby Brown one night on Arsenio Hall. And Bobby Brown was talking about that. He was bragging about the fact that he was an Aquarius. Yeah, I'm an Aquarius. And Arsenio Hall said, yeah, me too. And Bobby Brown looks at me and says, yeah, Aquarius is a water sign. I'm like, dude, you better check that. Just because it's got a guy with the pot. But Bobby Brown would have been in her 12th house. I don't know what, I don't know when his sun fits, but it'd be probably around Saturn. Not a good marriage. Now, sometimes with men and women, opposite signs can work. That would have been the attraction. That would have been the chemistry. She's got Sun, Venus, and Leo. Big heart. Big heart. But with his sun in the 12th house. I don't know. Very, very challenging. So that's a seesaw chart. It tore her in two. And I do think, and not unfortunately, I'm not going to fucking apologize for it. But I talked about Tulsi Gabbard, the seesaw chart, as being prime for programming. Because if you're split apart, right, if you're trying to please this group over here or this group over here, what does it do? It creates a split inside of you. And if you have that, then guess what? You're more easily programmed because you're split. You're like a split personality. Now, she does have the moon down here, and it still is kind of in this seesaw pattern. But because the moon is down here, it kind of resolves itself a little bit. So she's not as drastic as Whitney Houston, clearly. And she's got this Libran-esque finding the balance between the left and the right. And then she has this other side of her, which looks very like peaceful and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Peaceful and considerate and pretty with Venus there. Like Tulsi Gabbard has a lot of femininity, but behind it, she's ambitious. I think that's really what this chart is communicating. Like Mars behind her sun, she's ambitious. And with Venus, it takes the edge off of it a bit because Venus is all about finding agreement, finding the middle. Not here, not with Mars. Mars in the background is pushing that along. Very interesting. And also because of where Mars is in her chart, she's also connected to what has happened with Mars since October. October, Mars went behind the sun. And right here, you can see Mars is behind the sun. So she's going to go through her Mars return. That's going to be a very powerful time for her. She might meet some opposition. But everything resolves itself with the moon. And she has moon conjunct the true node, both at 7 degrees. Like that is pretty darn close to being exact. And it's in Leo. So what does that mean? It means in this lifetime, well, first of all, technically speaking, this woman should be I mean, I don't know her rising sign because I don't know. But even with a true node, moon conjunction, Leo, she should be a parent. Like, just fucking give up all this Aquarian world stuff. Tulsi, go be a mom. Hope that doesn't sound too too derisive, too condescending. Go be a mom, Tulsi. Get off this fucking stage. Just go be a mom. Go live somewhere in an island paradise and, wait it all out. Have some kids. And when the smoke clears, just, start the new race. You could be like Halle Berry in Cloud Atlas, except a little bit different. No, but this is interesting. With the moon true node conjunction, to me in Leo, this is beginning to tilt into kind of like being the universal mother. Like that. I mean, this is the energy that she has. This is kind of big energy. And it is a first quarter moon. So she's working, right? She's working the angles with her moon. She's taking emotional content. She's trying to figure out how to apply it, what to do with it, so she can climb the emotional ladder. And she's got a trine with Mercury, and she's got a trine right there, Uranus at 29 Scorpio, retrograding, but by degree, it's in a white conjunction, a white trine with her moon. And she has a Mercury Uranus trine. She's not dumb. She's a lot smarter than people may give her credit for. Because she doesn't really come off as an intellectual when she talks. But I think she's a lot smarter than people give her credit for. And she could be taking orders because that's Saturn, Jupiter. This is like taking orders is what a soldier would do. And Klaus Schwab is her new general. He's her new commanding officer. Klaus Schwab is an Aries. He's got a bunch of planets in Aries too. And all pretty close to, I think. Let me see if we can do Klaus Schwab. See if we're in here. Oh, she's Klaus's girl. I can tell you that right now. Don't sit on her. She's got a. Do we have Klaus Schwab? Oh, here, let's go back. Don't sit on her. She's got a significant chart. She has a pretty significant chart. Jupiter sextile Uranus. That's good at improvising. Jupiter sextile Moon. Jupiter in Libra. Interesting. Saturn in Libra exalted. Jupiter expands Saturn. They're retrograde. None of her Aries planets are retrograde. All of her Libra planets are retrograde. Juno's retrograde. Pluto's retrograde. Saturn's retrograde. Jupiter. So I think it would take, in some ways, a backseat to her Aries planets that aren't retrograde. Makes them even more dominant in some ways. She has Black Moon, Lilith, and Scorpio. She's got secrets for sure. And Neptune, Sagittarius. So she's a boomer. She's a baby boomer. I'm not a boomer, Gen X. And, I love Gen X. They've got Neptune and Sag and Uranus and Scorpio right there, and Pluto in Libra. I think Gen X has some of the best outer planet formations of the generations that are alive. I think they have the best trio. Neptune exalted in Sagittarius, Uranus exalted in Scorpio. Pluto's not exalted in Libra, but it's an interesting place. And she has Saturn in Libra, which is exalted. 3 exalted planets. She's got Mars in rulership. She's got Venus in detriment. Interesting chart. Grand trine. Yeah. When Neptune and Saturn move into Aries, that's going to be a big time for her. Really big time. Because they're tracking one another for a while. That means it's going to conjunct her Mercury. So that means that she could have a period of time. That's in 2024. So she could have a period of time where she could be very inspired in terms of her speaking. But Saturn also confers authority on top of Mercury. And Saturn's going to come in and start to conjunct all these planets in her chart. So switching them on. 2024. What's happening in 2024? An election. Keep your eye on this woman. For sure. Jupiter, Saturn. But yeah, this is Klaus Schwab. And she's got like a square with Saturn. Saturn-Jupiter square. So sometimes she can cede her authority. She could cede her authority to authority, her own personal authority. And even with the opposition, like over here, Klaus Schwab's her new general. That's her new CEO. Okay, let me look up Klaus Schwab. You will have nothing and you will like it. You will love having nothing. Would you like a cricket burger? The cricket burger is very good. All right. I'll have a steak. A bloody steak. Okay. Okay, here we go. AstroSeek, come on, where are you? Astro theme, not Charles Schwab. Klaus Schwab. Hold on. I had this. Astrotheme.com. All right, hold on. I had his chart one time. Oh, here we go. Klaus Schwab. Klaus Barbie. No. Klaus Maria Brandauer. Where's my Schwab? Where's my Schwabby? Am I going to have to like cast a fucking Klaus Schwab chart? All right, let me try this again. All right. Let's see what we got. Facebook, Charles Schwab. There's some good articles here. Yeah, there's some good charts. Some people are kind of dialed into his chart. But what's really funny is that none of these astrological services have his freaking chart. That is so weird. Okay. Let me just do this. I'll put together a chart. Like AstroTheme, you'd think they'd have it because AstroTheme is what is it? It's French, isn't it? I think it's a French. Okay, so he's born March 30th. Let me do a new chart. He's born March 30th. And a long time ago. Here, let's dump Saki. By the way, where is she? Got this other woman there now who has awkward smiles. She's been gone a while, hasn't she? Okay, so March 30th. And let's see, where is he? Okay. 1938. He's my mother's age. $1938. Or come on back here. Okay, 1938. We're going to give him the old sunrise effect. There's no birth time, of course. Can't even find a fucking chart on him. Ravensburg. Germany. Grew up in post-war Germany. That says a lot, doesn't it? Okay. So his Venus, I'm going to show you how close he is to Tulsi Gabbard. I love Tulsi Gabbard. I'm starting to sound like Netanyahu there. Yes, Tulsi. She's very special. So here's his Venus. 22 degrees, Aries. So there's a Sun-Saturn conjunction, which is why he's living for seemingly ever. Actually, 83. My mother's 83. She's in good shape. He'll live a long time, especially when they get all the transhumanist technology jacked into him if he doesn't already have it. Yeah, so we got Mercury and Venus, 22, 27. Mercury's at 27. Venus is at 22. Another one of these guys got a bit of a bundle chart, right? A little bit of a bundle chart. But I think we might be able to make a case here for kind of a tilted bucket and everything moving into Neptune and Virgo. Interesting. So just pay attention right there, 22, 27, and then 8, 8. All right, let's go back and look at Tulsi's chart, 22, 27, 8, 8. There's 22. So Klaus Schwab's sun is in almost exact conjunction with Tulsi Gabbard and her son. And his Mercury is at 27 conjunct her Venus. And then he has what, Saturn and his sun, right? Saturn and his sun at 8 degrees, right there, conjunct her Mercury. Man, they are connected. Tulsi, Klaus is your daddy. He's your daddy. So who is Tulsi Gabbard going to I don't follow the Star Wars shit, but I know that the main character became a woman, right? Became like a young girl. Like everything else. All these pretty soon they're gonna redo the Lou Gehrig story. It's gonna be played by a woman. But that's who Tulsi Gabbard reminds me of. Tulsi Gabbard reminds me of this young woman who plays the. I'm sorry, I'm not a. I dropped off really kind of after the third George Lucas movie, and then the prequels I just really wasn't interested in. So I'm sorry, I'm not a big Star Wars geek, but whoever that woman is who plays the ass kicker, that's Tulsi Gabbard, because she's a warrior, right? The woman's a warrior. If you follow through, and I think they're going to continue to make these Star Wars movies, she'll play a role that's going to be very similar to Tulsi Gabbard. She'll be like, the ruler of the universe or something, the ruler of some planet. But Klaus Schwab is all over this chart, all over it. Saturn, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Venus. Oh, he's invested in her. I tell you that right now. Just take another peek here. Remember 7, 20, 22, 24. Oh, you know what? Now that I've got them in here, I can fucking put them in a synastry chart. Watch. I don't even have to go back there. Let's do a synastry chart. Tulsi. And let's hear. Those are some of my clients. You can't see them. Okay, where are we? K. Schwab. Okay. And away we go. Okay, now you can really get a visual of how tight they are. See that? Look at that. That's a pretty cozy stellium. Venus, Mars. Wow. Mercury, Venus, Sun. That's exactly. Oh, throw Ceres in there too. Look at that. Oh, wow. His true node is on her Uranus. Very interesting. Uranus is, it's about forward thinking, innovation, especially in Scorpio. Very interesting. His vertex, well, it wouldn't be his vertex because we don't know his rising sign. Interesting. I think we've got a connection here. So based on that, I think you can almost rest assured that she will remain prominent in American media and politics all the way up to 2024. And if Donald Trump runs again in 2024, and Tulsi, what would Tulsi Gabbard do? Would he take Tulsi Gabbard as his running mate? If Trump runs, would he do that? He might. Trump is pretty cagey that way. Or would she come in and run as a third party candidate if we even have an election? And at that point, does it even matter? Well, when David and I had our chat on Friday, talked about how what happened with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton during the election night, it kind of did matter because I think Hillary thought she was going to win. And you can clearly see that when she is fucking pissed. When she is pissed, she's bleary eyed. You can tell she's been up all night and drinking and throwing wine bottles. She thought she was going to win. And Trump didn't. I don't think Trump thought he was going to win. He was surprised as hell that he won. So that's why this last election is like, okay, that ain't happening again. We are on all in. All in. So yeah, that election, you know, I think it counted. 2016 counted because they didn't know. People were very tight-lipped then. The pollsters, see, they couldn't get a good poll number. They could not get a good poll number because a lot of people did not tell them that they were going to vote for Donald Trump. They were very tight-lipped about it. Remember now, this is, this is they're not really the silent generation, but they were acting like the silent generation. Some of the silent generation is in there. They're still around. My mother is part of the silent generation. She's still around. She's got a lot of friends. Right. So they were a big voting bloc, which, by the way, they did everything in their power to erase over the last 2 years. And they've done a pretty significant job taking those numbers out of circulation, right? They don't want that to happen again. So in that sense, in that moment, in that time, like those results counted, but it was very rare. It was very, very, very rare. And 2020 was, we know what it was, but you just go back in other election cycles and a lot of elections were thrown. There's a lot of very dubious circumstances in a number of these elections. I can go all the way down the line if you want me to, but I'm not going to because this show's about astrology. I'm just bringing this up for Tulsi Gabbard because somehow, some way, I think they want Tulsi Gabbard to be in a position of leadership and power. And if Klaus Schwab's chart is any indication of the relationship between himself and Tulsi Gabbard, you can rest assured that she will be moved into whatever capacity and whatever role. It doesn't have to be a president. Doesn't have to be a traditional president. They could have some other fucking title or role. I'm assuming we will have an election in 2024. That's a big assumption at this point. And if that's the case, Tulsi Gabbard will play a significant role. She'll either join somebody inside the Republican Party as a candidate, or she'll be a third party candidate. And that third party will be the party of the new party, the party that will bring people together, right? That will be the party of whatever the World Economic Forum wants. And Tulsi, by the way, oh, there's a little baby scorpion. I see you down there. Tulsi Gabbard, by the way, is anti-gun. She's a big gun controller. So you asked about Tulsi Gabbard's chart. There you go. All right. Um, I'm going to, I wanted to talk about, I kind of wanted to talk about death a lot. I know death sounds really depressing, but I wanted to talk about death a little bit because there's a lot of it going on right now. Yeah. So I'm going to show you here the relationship between Saturn and the Grim Reaper and death and Father Time. And this is just a Wikipedia um, article, but you can see the relationship between the two. Father Time is a personification of time in recent centuries. He's usually depicted as an elderly bearded man, sometimes with wings, dressed in a robe, and carrying a scythe and an hourglass or other timekeeping device, which represents time's constant one way movement and more generally and abstractly entropy. As an image, Father Time's origins are curious. The ancient Greeks themselves began to associate Chronos, their word for time, with the agricultural god Cronus, which I've talked about before. It's this weird merger between Cronus with a CH and Cronus with a CR, who had the attribute of a harvester's sickle. The Romans equated Cronus with Saturn, who also had a sickle and was treated as an old man, often with a crutch. The wings and hourglass were early Renaissance additions, and he eventually became a companion of the Grim Reaper personification of death, often taking his scythe. He may have as an attribute a snake with its tail in its mouth, an ancient Egyptian symbol of eternity. So we can see here, right, these images of Saturn and Father Time and the Grim Reaper. So it's this a cipher, like so Saturn and the Grim Reaper and Father Time, they're a cipher of these three images, right, or these three symbols. Around New Year's Eve, the media, in particular, editorial critics use the convenient trope of Father Time as a personification of the previous year. So, right, what month is that? That's the month of Capricorn, Saturn rulership, who typically hands over the duties of time to the equally allegorical baby New Year or the New Year, or who otherwise characterizes the preceding year. In these depictions, Father Time is usually depicted wearing a sash with the old year's date on it. Time, in his allegorical form, is often depicted revealing or unveiling the allegorical truth, sometimes at the expense of a personification of falsehood, fraud, or envy. This theme is related to the idea of veritas filiae temporis. Time is the father of truth. So there's a number of different depictions. So here's Kronos and his child. See the wings and the scythe, the reaper of time. So we are in a time of death. It is the time of death with Pluto in Capricorn. It is the death of the old age, the death of the old world, the death of the old order. The old man, Joe Biden, is telling people that we need to have a new world order and we need to leave it. Lead it. He's Father Time and he's knocking on death's door. And so we have Pluto, which again it represents death, Capricorn time, the Reaper. And there are people dying. We just had Taylor Hawkins, the guy from the Foo Fighters. He died. He died in Colombia. Interesting place. Colombia, of course, being theoretically the symbol of the Statue of Liberty. Now, according to the news, his heart was like 60 grams heavier than a typical heart. What was going on inside that heart? What did he pick up? What made his heart so heavy? Now, you know that the Foo Fighters were requiring all of their fans to be vaccinated before they could come see them. And were they being good examples for their fans? Is that what happened? Was there a professional mandate? You have to get vaxxed or you can't come on tour. Was that part of what happened? We're reading about people that are dying at a very rapid rate. There's stories every day, people dying when they're young. So, in fact, I believe that the actuarials, the insurance statistics are off the fucking charts about people who are dying between the age of 25 and 50 now. Like, we've had more people in the last 2 years die before 25 and 50 than in almost any time in recent history. It just doesn't happen that way. In a world where we're taking better care of ourselves, theoretically, have better food, lifespans are longer, it doesn't add up. And there was this young woman who was a goalkeeper for the Stanford women's team who won the NCAA tournament. They're national champions, and she made a great play. She saved the game for them. He winds up dead in her room, her dorm room. You know, they said that she committed suicide. Did she? You know, so we're in a time where people are freaking dying. Okay. So death is in the air. We have the South Node in Scorpio. David and I talked about this. And when that is going on, when that is happening, it's not something that is happening in a hermetically sealed environment. I had my aunt and my cousin. They died. My cousin was younger than me. My cousin was in her, I think, 50s. She was overweight. Like, I'd say she's a beast. She died. My aunt, she was okay. The next thing you know, they've got her on a ventilator and she's out. She wasn't the healthiest, but she went in to deal with something with her hip. And the next thing you know, she's gone. So right now, there are a number of people that know a number of people that have died. Like, it's not uncommon to know somebody who has died within the last 3 months. It was more common before. So those things don't happen in a vacuum. They don't happen in a hermetically sealed chamber. It is impacting us. Death as a spirit is in the air. And you can see it. You can see the death throes of the economy. You can see the death throes of the old order of the world. And so what do you need in order to create the psychic momentum to have a massive paradigm change on Earth? You need bodies. You need a death count. All wars are mass rituals. They're all mass rituals. And they use those deaths, those sacrifices, in order to create the new order that emerges out of it. That's what happens. And so we have not had a kinetic war, but there have been a lot of people that have died over the last 2 years. Children, teens, athletes, elders, seniors that were cajoled and moved into, their senior homes with no access. You can't come see them. You can't come see these people. Sorry. You have to wave at them through a window. We have them now. Andrew Cuomo. What happened in New York? Was it 14,000 people? Like crazy numbers, okay? Crazy numbers. So we have seen 2 years worth of bodies piling up. And it doesn't happen. It does not happen in a hermetically sealed environment. And so what happens is that energy is the energy that's used for the transformation of paradigms, the fall of empires, and the birth of a new order. This is what's going on. And of course, you get a lot of people off Social Security and all the other stuff that is related to having, less useless eaters around. And that's just one aspect of it. There's other aspects of death. That's the physical aspect. And we have the metaphysical aspect of death. Again, when we look at Saturn, remember now, Saturn is the reaper. Saturn is the reaper. Pre-Pluto, that was it, man. Saturn was the outpost. It was the outpost of astrology in the solar system. So when we have Saturn going through a sign, and David and I talked a little bit about this on Friday night, what does it do? It impacts whatever those things are that are related to that sign. It will cull them. It will reap them. And whatever is left is the thing that's supposed to be there. When you go through Saturn transit astrologically, what does Saturn do? Whatever it's hitting, it will cull the things that need to die. And whatever is left over is the seed of the new. That's what Saturn does. It compresses the planet that it winds up conjuncting with in a transit with your chart. It empties it out so that when it moves on, you are in a new space. You get to essentially reorganize and reset that planet. There's that word reset. So that's what's going on. And through Aquarius, what's it doing? Aquarius is the sign of friendship and community. So when Saturn is in Aquarius at the first decan, what does it do? The first thing that happened, right? The first thing that happened, 3/11, was that the NBA shut down. What is the NBA? It's the National Basketball Association. What's an association? It is an Aquarian entity. A league of teams is Aquarian. The League of Nations was supposed to be the UN coming out of World War I. It's supposed to be this global thing connecting everybody. The American League, the National League, the National Football League, the National Hockey League. Those are all leagues. Those are all Aquarian entities. And what happened? Shut it down. They shut it down. And then what happened after that? Well, they started calling fans because fans got tired of the shit. Right. So we could just see that. It was all group oriented. Early on, it was group oriented. The Olympics, that's an Aquarian operation. All these countries from around the world getting together in Tokyo. Nope, not going to happen. Sorry. Saturn and Aquarius. Shut it down. And when it came back, it was like kind of weak sauce. Honestly, nobody's really into it. So we could just see from a mundane perspective in the first decan, 0 to roughly 9 degrees, Saturn is impacting groups. It's also impacting friendships. It will impact friendships along the way through this whole entire Saturn cycle. Also, early on, Saturn and Aquarius, friends are divided into groups: conservative, liberal, left, right, vax, non-vax. Separate them out. Saturn separates. Jupiter joins. Jupiter expands. It includes, right? That's what it does. So we see that happening early on. And then it moves into the second decan, which puts it into the decan with Gemini. And what are we dealing with Saturn and Gemini? We're dealing with things like brothers and sisters, members of our family. And that's what Saturn did. People who thought they were really close to another person. Oh, you're like my brother. You vaccinated? No. Well, you thought. That's what you thought. You're really not like my brother. You're not like my sister. When you get vaccinated, you could be my brother and sister again. But until then, you're over there. And also with the schools, right? Saturn came in and started to hit that Gemini energy with schools. And you started to see parents like, fuck, what's going on in our schools? We got to take our kids out, or we got to go down to the school board and we got to raise some hell, right? That's all Gemini stuff. And now you're kind of getting into like the locality too. Where you live, your immediate sphere, city council meetings. That's all Saturn in Aquarius, second decan. Now it's in the third decan. It's in Libra. You have one-on-one relationships, but it could also be, again, this whole thing has to do with friends, associates, right? That's what happens with Saturn in Aquarius. So the one-on-one connection, that's a big thing. Two people in Libra with Saturn basically saying, you're not my friend anymore. So we're seeing like the death of friendships. We're seeing the death of things that we thought we could trust, like this whole idea that we could trust schools. We can't trust schools. And the implementation of this new order through our school system in Aquarius, which doesn't look like any other school system we've had before, with lots of indoctrination, like a lot of that Veritas stuff that was going on, when they were going into the schools. That was all Saturn second decan. And the teacher that had the communist flag on his, or was the Chinese flag, and a picture of Mao, and the guys hanging out with him and having a beer, and no, it was a guy, and I think it was so James is really smart. Like, I think he had some black guy who was talking to him, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, I can tell you my secrets. You're cool. You're down. Yeah, cool, right." So that was all inside the schools. That's a Saturn second decan Aquarius moment. So we're in it, right? And what happens is that things get reset. You get to reset with your friends, reset your relationship with your locality, reset your relationship with your children and what they're doing in school, maybe resetting them and getting them out of school. So again, these things are related to death, though, like the death of these friendships and the death of these relationships. And you have the physical death going on. We have the death of a culture. We have a death of an old order. There's a lot happening here. There's a lot of sacrificial, transformational death energy in the air. And people don't really understand it, or maybe they do, but they can't quite grasp it and process it. This is big stuff. We are dealing with titanic energies that are changing our world. And a lot of it is coming through physical and metaphoric death. And there's nothing wrong with death. We all have to face it. But here's the big challenge. And it gets back to where I started at the beginning of this stream, which I'm about to wind down now, is that we get these things, but we don't get the benefit of the near-death experience, right? Death is in the air. It's hitting us directly, indirectly, but it's not taking us to the place, even if it's just the feeling of death that is cleansing. Like when you lose somebody, you grieve. You lose a person or a pet, you grieve. And that energy is cleansing. It will cleanse your spirit. And that's just the losing of somebody. But there's more, there's more. When a person is involved in death and they have a near death experience, what happens? They have a life review. They get to see what went on and how they were a fuck up. And guess what happens? They come back and they're like, geez, I was a real fuck up. I can't be a fuck up anymore. You know what's interesting about people that have had these near death experiences? They have this local and non-local experience, and hopefully for them it's good, right? Because sometimes it's not good. Sometimes some of these people have near death experiences tends to be harrowing. So not everything is the light and the love and which we come to know. But when they come back, they have unusual gifts and abilities in many cases. Yes, I know. Which goes back to this thing that I talked about at the beginning, right? Where if we have this time out of time, we're, potentially we come back and we have, new gifts and abilities that incrementally get stronger inside of us. So I guess what I'm saying here is that we are in the portal of death. It's clear. But what we're not getting is we're not getting the benefits from it because it's happening at a level of denial that is, in my estimation, criminal. A criminal level of denial. And that level of denial is being perpetuated by medical professionals, by people in the pharmaceutical realm, by public officials who are the handmaiden for this catastrophe that we've been dealing with for the last 2 years. They're all in denial. So what do we have? We have all these statistics. The media is in denial. They're not talking about it. No, they want you to go think about Ukraine and how you can go over there and go kill somebody for Zelensky. Just get off your couch and give them money and send your kid over there. Go kill for Zelensky. That's what they want. That's called misdirection. And that leads to the denial of what's going on. And we can't deny it. Astrologically, it's there. We can see it. Right? Pluto, Capricorn, the Grim Reaper, Saturn. It's there. And I'm not here to bum you out, right? I'm here to share this with you so we have some awareness around it because it's just getting swept under the rug and people are just in denial. And this is where civilizations go wrong. This is where the collapse and fall of civilizations like the Mayans. The Mayans were in deep denial. They were in bloody denial. This is what happens. And then civilizations crumble from beneath the feet of the people that have been participating in them because they're just in denial. They don't want to look at things, and the people that control the flow of the information are the ones that keep them in denial. If you go back and you look at like the fall of the Mayans and the Aztecs, it was the high priest. The high priest kept everybody in denial by having sacrifice after sacrifice after sacrifice after sacrifice. And eventually everybody was just swept up into a bloody psychedelic death cult. And then they're just evaporated and they're gone. They're gone. And the ones that are left over are easily defeated by Cortez, right? So this is where we are right now. And at some point, people will have to come to grips with it. I feel like that's going to happen right around Scorpio season. You know, when we have the sun and we have Venus and Mercury, you know, those three planets that are, and even the moon that are going to be around, and in conjunction with the South Node, I think that will be a time where people will have more of a sense as to what's going on. And but that doesn't mean that we can't have a realization here. Anyway, I don't want to bring people down, but but I can't help but not speak to this. It's here astrologically. It's here in our lives. And the most criminal thing happening on the face of this realm is the denial and the agents of denial who perpetuate this idea that we just keep moving forward. And that's not completely true. All right. I'm going to pull the old train into the station here. Thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate it. RobertPhoenix.com. You can find me there if you want to book a reading. I have another show that I do Monday through Thursday, 15 Minutes of Flame. It's over on 15minutesofflame.com. And that's at 9:11 Central Standard Time. So for me and the astrological cats, use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to step what's possible. And stay out of denial because there's snakes there.